Hello, my name is Sylvia Tavernisi with Starhouse Amateur Theatre Company, and today I'm going to be showing you how to fix a small hole in your Halloween costume. While trick-or-treating is of course cancelled this year, many of us will still be dressing up, myself included. For the purpose of this tutorial, I will be using some quilting cotton and some black thread. However, this is a tutorial that works best for stretch fabrics, and you should always pick a thread color that matches your original fabric as best possible. This technique is one many sewists refer to as a slip stitch, used often to fix holes in nylon tights. One particularly memorable Halloween, I broke 3 pairs of tights in one day, and I was forced with repairing my 3rd pair of tights from the outside in while I was still wearing them. This technique is for situations such as that, and should not be practiced on garments that are not costumes. Before you begin sewing, you will want to mark out the lines which you will sew upon. Now you want these to be parallel to the sides of your fabric, not to the torn edges, but to the actual sides. Next, you'll want to take a length of thread about the length from your wrist to your elbow, and you're going to anchor it on a part of the fabric that will not show from the outside. This is somewhere to the inside of your line. In order to do that, you will go under and then over again in a basic back stitch. Now, if you want to modify your clothing more permanently, you will want to learn stitches like the back stitch and the running stitch. However, for something like this, the only back stitching you'll need to do is in order to replace a knot, for knots are not very comfortable against skin, especially to the inside of very skin-tight garments, such as Halloween costumes. Once you have your thread anchored, you want to bring it to where your stitching will begin, one of these lines. I use the right side as I am right-handed. You will want to use the one corresponding to your dominant hand. Now once you have drawn the thread under and then back up above to the outside of the fabric, you will want to pull it horizontally to the opposite side. Once you've done so, you want to re-enter the fabric at the base of your opposite line. Then push it under and pull it up in a standard sewing stitch manner. Then you'll want to pull it once more to the opposite side, in this case to the right, down into your line and up again. Now, this is where things get a bit complicated, as you want to keep your stitches as parallel as possible. You want to stitch along these lines, keeping your stitches exactly perpendicular. If you do not, you will run into some issues with wrinkling. Now, stretch fabric is more forgiving with this, hence why you would normally work with it. However, if your fabric is prone to wrinkling and you are in an emergency situation, don't be watching this tutorial. However, if you are in that situation, keep your stitches as parallel as possible and everything will turn out fine. Continue this process going up and up and up, almost in the manner of a ladder. An alternate name for the slip stitch is in fact the ladder stitch, and it might be one you're more familiar with. However, trivia aside, I have one more important lesson to impart about the slip stitch. One of the most common woes is catching your thread on your needle as you go through. In order to avert this, you must keep your thread below your needle. However, if it does happen to fall above and catch, there is a simple way out. Once you've created this horrid little loop that will plague you with tangles later on, you must simply pass your needle back up through your thread and you will be right as rain once more. This is another important reason to keep your tension loose as you do this, simply pulling it to create straight rungs rather than pulling it tight. Now, if you begin to struggle with your slip stitch, you may lose your thread off of your needle. I will demonstrate that in just a moment. Simply tug your rung straight and then re-thread your needle. This often happens to me during the end of sewing projects, as I have left the tail of my thread unattended for quite some time. Simply re-thread your needle and then pass it into your fabric. Now we are ready to tie off, and we must pass our thread back to the center of our fabric, similar to where we anchored it before. We will not be tying a knot here. Instead, we will be pulling it tight and creating this lovely, lovely seam. Then make sure that your tension is exactly where you want it and pass your thread into the center of your fabric, somewhere where it will not be visible in the folds you've just created. This is where thread matching is exceedingly helpful, and if you have not done it properly, you may still end up with some visible thread from the outside, no matter how wrinkly your fabric has become. Next, simply push your thread through, not catching the corner of your fabric, and create a few more back stitches over at this end. Now, I'm going to make them tiny to make life difficult for myself, but you can make them as big as you want as long as they're hidden in the folds. You're going to want to hook your needle under these back stitches, as many as you can catch, and then create a loop, which you will then pass your needle through to create a knot. Now, it is very important here that you catch the same back stitches every time, or else you will simply be tying a handful of slip knots. To create a double knot, pass your needle back under the back stitch, and then through the loop you've created once more. There you have a nice, sturdy seam for any holes you've created in your Halloween costume. How powerful it is depends on your tension and your anchoring. Now you can see here that I've created some wrinkles. This is because I'm working with quilting cotton. In stretch fabric, you will be able to manipulate the fabric such that it is hardly visible at all. Or, if it is particularly obvious, you'll at least be able to tell people, look, I fixed my Halloween costume all by myself. Now, if you're not so much a visual learner, or if you want to check out our other work, we'll be putting out a zine on our Gumroad with text versions of all these tutorials and more. It's pay what you want, and we'd really appreciate if you could toss $1 or 20 or 100, or really any amount you want our way. We are a completely not-for-profit theater company, and this is our only source of revenue right now since we aren't able to perform for donations. We really appreciate it. We're Starhouse ATC, and we thank you for watching.